Hi everyone, welcome to a Wolfram Language Design Review for our next version. This is about WebSockets. So, Chris, do you want to take it away here?
Sure. So first I thought, well, the main goal of this meeting is to just look at the design of how we might extend existing Wolfram language functions like socket connect or socket listen to work with WebSockets. But first I thought I would just say what WebSockets are. They are a type of connection that you can make over the web. They're persistent. You can have bidirectional communication over them.
What
Um,
protocol? Is it using TCP? Is it using, what is the protocol it's using?
So first it sends like an HTTP request. So it's like initially an HTTP connection. And then it says, upgrade my connection to a WebSocket connection. Um, so that's kind of the process.
Okay. And then what is that WebSocket connection?
I think TCP.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then there's a bunch of asynchronous stuff that can happen through WebSockets. Is that true?
Yeah, and the if for the existing socket functions, the way that would work is through something like socket listen, where you can set up a handler that's called on incoming data. So we kind of have an idea for how that would work for WebSockets using socket listen.
Okay. All right. Fine. Just so I
Um,
understand our existing socket functionality, what do we use it for?
Two things, ZMQ and TCP sockets. And there's a whole bunch of like different types of ZMQ, you know, protocol types, and then just TCP, plain TCP.
I understand, but are there systems that we have right now deployed that make extensive use of that functionality?
Well, the one I'm aware of, there's the Wolfram Language for Jupyter project that uses ZMQ. I think we have other stuff that uses ZMQ in places, but off the top of my head, I don't
Okay,
know.
fair enough. All right, fine. Okay, so you want to go ahead and show this?
Sure. So right now, the first thing we wanted to implement was just so we have a something in the language, a package called curl link, that supports all kinds of, like reading
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
URLs and that
I
kind of stuff.
understand.
We're
But
extending that to work with WebSockets.
right. Okay, let's look at some design.
Okay. Well, Arnu just had some fun examples that he wanted to show if you're interested in that.
We can also do that at the end. I think Stephen wants to
Okay,
dive in, so let's go to
sure.
socket. Yeah.
Well, tell me
So,
what the examples are.
well, the kind of things that we found that, services that use WebSockets, Arnud had one with like Gemini, the LLM, and then there was another one with like financial data.
Okay, okay. All right. Well, do you want to show those examples, or how does this supposed to
Let's leave
work?
it to the end. I think that the key thing is the
Okay,
the uh, design itself. So
okay. Let's see
Sure.
it.
So the first thing that we did was just to look at, how the existing design for Socket Connects works to try to figure out how we'd extend it for WebSockets. Um, so like it's pretty simple for
Yep.
like a ZMQ or
Okay.
TCP socket.
Yep.
You
Yep.
just give
Yep.
it this
Yep. Yep.
first argument. It's a little bit more complicated for WebSockets, but in the simplest form, it's pretty similar. So, you give it, there's a scheme, WSS scheme that you can use for WebSockets. And the idea is this, that if Socket Connect sees that scheme, then we treat that as a WebSocket connection instead of like a TCP connection.
Okay. What does the S stand for?
So that's WebSocket secure. So
I see.
that's over
Okay, I get
TLS.
it. Yep.
Um, and so
and
there's
the
a whole,
icon, the icon is sorry, the icon is the official WebSocket icon, by the way. So
Okay.
that's not our icon, but we can
Yeah,
change
I
it
get
if
it.
you don't like it.
If that's the common WebSocket icon, I don't see why we shouldn't use it.
yeah.
Yeah, and we'll make sure it's we can use it.
Yep.
So just there's different forms of this that are basically additional things that the original Socket Connect accepts. So, as a URL. But
Yep.
another thing that the original Socket Connect does was it accepts a list of like a host and a port. So that's another kind of scenario that we accept. And you'll notice that there's a second argument here. So for Socket Connect, that's how you specify like the type of connection, the type of socket. So
Yep.
this could be ZMQ, this could be TCP. So now you're telling it WebSocket secure. Um,
Yep.
but kind of an interesting thing about the WebSockets, right, is that initial
Sorry, what's that
HTTP
second syntax there? The echo dot blah blah blah, comma, quotes, WSS. What's
So
that?
this is another original thing from Socket Connect. The idea is, you give it a scheme, and each
I see it
scheme
has a
corresponds to a
default port.
port. Yeah,
It has a default port.
yeah.
Okay.
So instead of having to say remember 443,
No,
you
no,
could
I
remember.
understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I got it.
The special thing about WebSocket connections is that it actually uses HTTP. So unlike for ZMQ or TCP, you can give like a full URL with like parameters. So that's a new thing for WebSockets. And certain services that we found, like this is how you would specify your API key is in the URL. Another important thing is that another important feature of that first argument is that we also want to accept an HTTP request. So basically what we found is that it's kind of, whatever service that you're working with, it could examine any part of that initial request for its service. So maybe it looks at the headers that you're sending in. So in the language, we were just like, well, what's the existing way of specifying that? And we have HTTP request. So that can also be the first argument for WebSockets.
And a typical header can be an API key, like a thing
Right. Can it
where
have
you
cookies and things as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we kind of have some additional, finer details about this. Like there's some HTTP requests that aren't compatible with WebSockets, and we have error handling regarding that. And so basically, I just wanted to go through like what are the two socket types. We have WSS, and then also if you're not using the secure version, then there's just WS.
Okay.
And so that's basically the high level parts of Socket Connect.
I'm sorry. That's not very well worded. That error message is wrong because no.
Okay.
Can we somebody please do some basic editing of these things? And
I
especially
can review those with Chris. I don't think those are fine.
I mean, we don't usually say is wrong. We just say, address specification blah 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 is incompatible with the specified with protocol TCP or something.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
No, we don't tend to have value judgments. It's just like it's incompatible. Who knows which one is correct? See what I'm saying? It could be the address is wrong. Could be the protocol is wrong. So we just say is incompatible, and that we don't have to address that.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Okay.
So we also just had a look at the socket object. You've seen the kind of design for it. There's a little bit of a visual difference. Then also, the socket objects have properties. So I'm just going to focus on, there's a few new ones that we need for WebSockets to represent WebSocket connections fully. So we have a connected object, a connected property. So you could do something like, my socket bracket connected to just see what the current status is,
Yep.
if it's alive or not. Also, WebSocket connections, they when the connection is closing, there's a way to have an integer that represents like why it's closing, and also a part of text that represents why it closed. So in order to represent a WebSocket connection, we need a way for a user to be able to access, like why was my WebSocket connection
Right.
closed?
I understand. That's a bad name for that. So I mean, let me think about that. What else are those things called? Closing codes. What are they called?
Status
exit
code. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Code, exit code.
Well, exit code is usually for a process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are those things usually called?
In the RFC, they call it a status code, and the way it's implemented there's a special type of WebSocket message that's a close type message. So this message contains a status code.
Okay. I mean, it should say status code. It shouldn't have just code. Code is just completely obscure. Maybe closing status code.
Well, it could be closed by the time you're long closed by the time you're checking it.
No, I know, but it's the status code at the closing. See, if you say closed status code, then it's not clear whether it's a verb, noun. I don't love closing. Anybody got a better suggestion?
Well, maybe look at the docs to see what language they use. They may have a
I'm
language for it.
seeing
If you
this. I'm at a table of WebSocket close codes. There is this term close code does exist. I
Chris,
just
can you
don't
click
like
on that?
close
So
code. It's just completely obscure.
Did you want me to open the RC?
Mhm.
Okay. See if that, they call it the status code, like I was saying. But yeah, I saw like in the other implementations, I think I saw closed code of WebSocket support.
Yeah. That is the thing. I mean,
this is specific to closing only. This is not a this is not a regular status code. So you do have to
I
qualify
understand.
it.
Yeah.
I understand.
The closing status code would be good.
Yeah, but then we got to have closing reason.
Yeah.
I guess this is okay. Closing status code, closing reason.
That sounds good.
Okay. Properties set for a TCP socket. Really? You can set them?
I just meant the set of properties.
Oh, I see.
Collection.
Set as opposed to assign.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, what's next?
Also, we thought we needed an option for WebSockets. The reason is there's two types of data messages you can send on WebSocket connections. So there's basically a WebSocket protocol, and there's like a text type message or a binary type message. And so we were thinking about repurposing binary format as the way of representing
What
that.
does binary format used for now? I mean, it was used for file opening, I remember, but can you look up what we say about it right now?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just for file opening. I don't know if I've ever seen it for anything else, but and yeah, that obviously.
Like look up the Wolfram, not Mathman.
Yeah. I don't know if I have the docs downloaded, but
I think binary format is not bad.
I don't think it's bad either. There's an option for streams and sockets then. That's what we'd say.
Yeah.
Can you go back?
We would update.
Right, go back to the page here. Seems reasonable to me.
all right.
Okay.
But wait a minute, is it a string there? Is binary format a string there or a symbol?
It's a symbol, but I was also going to accept it if it's a string.
But wait a second, I don't understand. Those options up there, those are strings, aren't they? Just do an input form of that line.
The TCP socket one?
Yeah, that connected clients and so on, that's a string, right? Oh, okay, it already showed that they're strings.
Yeah, and so the reason why
this is just wrong.
This is
just wrong. It shouldn't work this way.
This is the existing weird behavior of ZMQ and TCP sockets where all the properties are also shown as options. So for WebSockets, I was just not going to do that, and I was just going to have the binary format.
Okay, this is just wrong. What happens here? I mean, these things should be in an association if they're strings like this, but and these are properties basically.
Most of them are, yeah.
But can they be assigned to an existing TCP socket or not?
I don't think so. I think you could think like maybe the socket listener could be assigned to something, you'd set up a socket listener, but they're not really assignable, and if you try to, if you do set options of my TCP socket to one of these, you get like an error.
But that needs to be it's not an option, right? These need to be something like a top level option for sockets that says connection settings or something, right? And then these are the settings that happen to be associated with that socket.
Well, they're not even really settings; they're just properties. Like, I think it's kind of fine how it works now for them, where you can just do like properties and then check out individual properties. But again, this is the existing stuff for ZMQ and TCP, and I was thinking it would work differently for WebSockets.
I'm sorry. Say this again.
Web TCP and ZMQ sockets, that's the existing stuff, has this weird behavior where all those properties that we looked at earlier are also can be found through options, and it's documented here, as a property or as options. And I didn't think that really made sense, so
It
I was
doesn't
just
make
saying
sense. It
for
doesn't make sense.
WebSockets,
We should
we
deprecate
just have
that.
binary format.
We should deprecate it, except for a stream. How does it work? Streams have options, don't they?
Yeah.
But they're not string options. They're all symbol options.
Check. Looks like that. But like if you
Is a
did set,
pen check documented? I've never heard of it.
huh?
I
Let's
guess a
see.
documented thing.
It's undocumented. This is a cesspool.
Right, but that's not the goal of this meeting, of course. I
I
mean,
know,
we
but
can
hold
yeah,
on.
we can have
No, wait.
we can
Stop.
dedicate a meeting to that.
Stop. We're going to figure out what's going on here before we pile more stuff on top of this. Okay. Okay. So streams have some options, including undocumented ones. And that weird method option there, which repeats the binary format stuff, which is really weird. Look, I don't think streams are our most used thing. I mean, basically, streams are.
I'm not sure I agree
Okay,
with that.
look, what other options, genuine options, would WebSockets have?
We think that it only needs the binary format.
Okay, so everything else is a property.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So can you do set up? I mean, how do you set for an existing stream? When you open it, you specify binary format, but once it's open, the goose is cooked. Is that correct?
No, you could do set options, and you don't actually there's not a way in the existing design for Socket Connect to specify, like binary format. So if you wanted to change it, you would just change, using set options. And what this does is it just like if you did write string to the socket, it just changes like in the WebSocket protocol what type of message.
No, I understand what it's doing. I'm just asking how is that a thing that we're doing elsewhere to say of a running thing that you can change its properties with a set options?
I feel like you can, but I can try it. Well, at least for this, it cannot be.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody else know?
Not off the top of my head.
I would look at task object because that is something that is running, and perhaps it takes.
Okay, does it have set options?
I'm checking.
I mean, notebooks have, notebook objects have options that you can change, of course. I mean, there's a lot of object things.
Oh yeah,
where
you can set options in notebook object. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There's
I'm
other
sold.
objects
It's
where
all
you can.
good. Yes, we can do this. Okay. All right. What's next?
Well, just one note is that there's also for WebSockets, right? There's a way to create WebSocket servers. We kind of imagined this use case to be just talking to different WebSocket services. So we didn't think that there was a need to create a WebSocket server in Wolfram language. And so, if you wanted to create like a TCP server, the function you would use is socket open. But since we're not doing that for WebSockets, we have an error message in that case. And here are some different ways in which you might think that you'd be able to use WebSockets for this
Can
case.
somebody please edit these messages? I'm kind of annoyed that these are, we have a standard that we've set over the last, 38 years now about what these look like. And it's not like this.
Yeah, I can do that, and we can
make sure that there aren't things like this. I mean, this is fine modern American, but it's just not the standard that we have for these messages.
Yeah.
Chris, can you generate a list of the messages and then we can take a look at them? Okay.
Sure. And some of these were, they're edited from the existing stuff too. So there's existing messages that are like this, but yeah.
We don't use isn't. It's is not.
Yeah.
Protocol, this would be much shorter. It would just say protocol WSS is not supported for, well, no, I don't understand. No, this is just wrong. There should be an error message that comes out when you do the socket open, and the failure should be protocol not supported. Or, I'm sorry, the server, I don't know what the failure message should be, but there should be an error message because the action is what failed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I was just going with how it's implemented right now. And so like I think if you looked at like possible issues, maybe they're hiding the failure objects. But yeah, currently for ZMQ and TCP, what you get back in any possible error case is a failure message. We
Failure
can change that.
message, or
A
it's not
failure
a,
object, I meant.
well, that's wrong. It should generate a message. Make sense?
Yeah.
Fahim, does that make sense to you as well? I
Yeah,
mean, you're
that's
the one who
fine.
maintains this stuff, right?
Right.
unmaintained.
No, this is unmaintained. I maintain HTTP.
I
But
see. Okay, all right. So Chris can fix these.
I think Chris is the de facto socket person at the moment.
Okay, all right. Okay.
He's not the one that originally developed it.
Okay,
So.
I got it. I got it. They were developed a long time ago. Wasn't Jesse involved in developing these?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. In any case, let's keep going.
So socket listen, this is how we would deal with, data arriving asynchronously.
Wait a minute. Socket listen. What? How does socket listen work? Socket listen is an action when something arrives on that socket. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I can go to
No. Just tell me. Just tell me. Socket listen is setting something up. It's a way of essentially declaring I want this function executed when this socket has something happen to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, the only part of it that's a little bit confusing is just that there's also a way to kind of use it to set up a server at the same time. So like if you did this socket listen automatic with print, you're doing two things. You're creating a server socket and you're creating a handler. You have to, if you want to create a handler for an existing socket, you first have to, connect it, get the socket object, and then you do socket listen of the socket object and then the handler.
Okay, but what's that first thing about servers? Is that special to WebSockets?
No, this is all the existing stuff here.
For WebSockets, we only do clients. Only the handler for client sockets is what we're doing. So we have a socket connect, then there's a socket listen on that socket, and then the action, for example, print.
Very weird that we called that socket listen. Okay, in any case, it would be more like set socket action.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of combines two things. One is a socket listen, and one is a set socket action. And
But what does it mean to do socket listen without the socket action?
Well, you're both doing socket open plus a set socket action. You're opening a socket. Yeah.
Okay, but so what's the socket listen of automatic? I don't understand that.
I think you're just creating a listening socket at kind of like a default endpoint there.
But what kind of socket is it?
TCP.
But I don't understand. That's not going to work with the WebSocket thing.
Yeah, it's a different protocol.
The section he has open right now is the current. Scroll to the WebSocket.
Okay. So I want to see the new stuff. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm just explaining to you that the extension of the existing stuff is only affecting a subset of the original.
Okay, but the socket listen automatic is something very weird.
And there's different forms too, right? Like you could specify what.
No. Just a second. Socket listen of automatic is picking its own port. Is that true?
I think so.
Okay. Do we use it for anything?
I don't know.
Okay, what's next?
So we're doing socket listen of WebSockets. Um, there's different events. I think for now, let's just focus on the data received event. This is the default automatic behavior. This is the same event that is used for the existing socket listen.
By the way, why don't we call that thing connection closed code, collection closed, or something? I'm sorry. I'm coming back to that close code, which I hate.
mhm. I mean,
I
connection
think
close
you're
code
enough
is
of a
fine.
linguistics enthusiast, Chris, that you can see why having a verb, a verb adjective combo word there doesn't work. Close code. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't know if it's a verb or an adjective. Okay, but in any case, how do these events show up?
Well, just ignore that for a second. And by default, you would do just something like socket listen of my socket of print. Um, well, actually, that's
I don't understand. Where are the events? Where are the events showing up?
so
In the
that's
next
that
in the next
that's
section,
Okay,
open
so
this
open
the
the
handler
section.
function keys. Yeah.
well, the events are a different part of that.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
The events are like if you did socket listen, my socket, and then there's handler functions option, and then like you can set up. I don't know the exact syntax, but you can set up different, data received goes to F1 and then another event goes to somewhere else. That
I'm
kind of thing.
totally confused here. I'm totally confused. Why do we have to say handler functions?
You
And
don't,
the
you
other,
don't. But usually
what's the alternative?
if most people won't care about the other more fine detail stuff, they'll just care about data received. And then you just do F1 like that. And then you're just
Okay, why is the extended form not just an association? Do you understand what I'm saying? We probably built socket stuff before we had associations, but why isn't the alternative second argument just an association of what to do in different cases?
it could be, I guess, just the existing options. I was going with the existing
I
options.
understand, but we're reviewing this whole design, not just putting something on top of something which maybe was not thought out very well.
I'll note that
Uh,
handler function keys is not just a socket, not just a socket listen thing, right?
I'm well aware.
Yeah. I just want to look at
Wait,
that.
it's not handler function keys; it's handler functions.
There's both.
Yes, I understand.
So
handler
here's
functions is definitely an association. Takes an association,
Right.
and we'll use that.
I
Right,
thought
but
you were saying the
why
second
not
argument for these.
combine those two? And if it is purely an association, use, oh, I see, the handler function keys are the things fed to the handler functions. What's the analog of that in the case of the sockets?
So the different keys you might get are socket. This is your data as a string, data as a byte
Right,
array.
okay, fine. So then, but is the handler function keys in many cases is used because we don't want to even synthesize that data unless we're going to use it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is
In
that
this,
an issue here, or do we have the data anyway?
I don't think it's really an issue because the association is all delayed rule. So, we're not expending any work, you know.
No. But we have to, in order to apply the association, we have to have that data there.
Yeah, all the data is available.
But it's immediately available. There's nothing that has to be done to prep it to be available.
If I understand.
Okay. Unlike some other things where it might be non-trivial to assemble data in some form, or there might just be a lot of data. I mean, in other words, can these things be big or not?
They can be big, but what I was trying to say was like, for example, data, right? This is the handler key for, you want the data as a string, but it doesn't really matter if we give you all of the keys because, you know, getting that data as a string isn't even done unless you actually, ask for that data
That's
key.
not true. It's not true. It's not true. If you give it as a function, it's no, it's not true. You have to provide the things to be able to apply the functions. You can't look inside the function to know what you have to provide. That's what handler function keys is for, to tell you what you have to prepare. Because in the end, what's going to happen is the function is going to be applied to an association, and the question is what keys are in that association. Do you see what I'm saying?
Not entirely.
Well, I'm going to say it again then. Okay. The way this works is a handler function is applied to an association. Got that?
Yep.
Right? That association needs to be ready when the handler function is applied to it. You cannot create the association on the fly when you know what's in the handler function. See what I'm saying? Once you're handed a handler function, it has to have the association ready to be applied for it to be applied to.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means that the data for every key in that association, the value associated with every key in that association, has to exist as soon as that function is going to be applied. It doesn't know. You can't look inside the function to say which keys are you going to need to use.
I guess maybe the point that I'm not understanding is just like this is literally an association. Imagine that this was a byte array with actual data, but that we might pass to a function, and you'll see, it's a delayed value, I guess.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying. Fair enough. Well, then handler function keys is probably unnecessary here.
In most cases, yeah.
I wonder why we didn't do that for other associations. Why didn't we do that for other associations for which we're using handler function keys? Of having that delayed value thing.
That was just something that the existing ZMQ link stuff does. So I just took it for WebSockets. I don't know, more about that.
Well, I understand, but I mean, that's a question, I guess, for LCC, why we didn't do that, why we haven't done that. But that might inform this. So, we should put in a handler function keys, but you, I guess, probably don't. I mean, look, what's the default setting of handler function keys? Maybe
All
the
the
default
keys.
setting is all.
Yep.
Okay, fine. All right, okay. So this is socket, data byte array. Wait a minute. Why isn't it data string? If that's a string.
This is taken from the existing handler keys for socket listen. We can change the names, but that was just what the existing names were.
Okay.
Is it consistent
do you
with
want to comment
CMQ?
on
Is that
this?
what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just we just picked the things that were consistent with the. Maybe you can open up the ZMQ to kind of show that.
Can do that.
Yeah, you should be able to, or open the socket listen documentation. It should be in there.
So like if you were doing, this is the kind of association.
There it is. There,
get.
it's right on the bottom of your screen there. There's the function is applied to association to each event. Data is the data received as a string. So that's why we use data, for the string one. And then we added, I think, what was the other one that we added? The data.
I think data maybe go along with the way that we're doing that. Fahim can perhaps say for the HTTP requests and so on.
That is body and body byte array is how we do it in URL read world.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's different, a little bit different.
Okay, so what are you proposing here in this extended behavior thing? What's the handlers used to refer?
This is the existing stuff. This is the existing stuff that we were just comparing. But I can go back to the WebSocket.
Just to put in one word is in WebSocket world, data would be mostly referred to as payload. Is that right?
Yeah, that's another way of saying it. Yeah,
that's a bit of a key term, though. I think data is. I mean,
I think it's okay, but we could make it clear that in the description of what it is, say payload.
Okay. So there's 3 new keys that are specific to WebSockets. There's the type of message. There's different types of message in the WebSocket protocol. And then, when we're talking to different people who might be interested in WebSockets, there's we found that some people, when you're getting data, you're not getting it as complete messages all the time. And we saw that some people might want to kind of handle how you're putting the parts together, how you're buffering the data in different ways. So there is an option to, when you're setting up these socket handlers, um, to kind of get the data as it arrives and not as complete messages. Um, so these two keys here are just relevant if you change a different option and you say, give me the data as it comes, I'll handle putting messages together.
How do you say, give me the data as it comes?
So we're using the record separators option. By default, we just give
Is
you
that
complete messages.
done for the other socket things?
A little bit, yes. We're kind of probably using it in a more extreme way than they are, but I can just go to how they describe it. So like it's like how what's actually fed to the handler is you can give like a delimiter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are you doing for that?
I'm saying that the default separation here is um, messages, but you can also give a new value of automatic.
And can I say one thing? Like you have to think about it. Like if you see like Chat GPT, right, and it would be a WebSocket connection, right? You kind of see it typing, right? And while it's typing, right, it's not complete, right? There's bytes left in part is greater than 0, and multi-part complete is false because it's not
Yes,
completely
I
done yet.
understand.
There can be an option where you say, okay, I'm just going to wait till that entire message, the
Yes, I
entire response is
understand. But
complete.
what is
Okay.
record separators set to?
So the default, sorry, I got that wrong. The default is automatic, and that's how the handler is called only with complete messages. But if you used a value of none, then you get it just with the data as it arrives.
That's pretty obscure. Is that consistent with what's happening for other sockets?
Other sockets don't really support those,
Okay, I don't think using record separators is a backhanded way of saying whether you want it to come in asynchronously is right.
it's not, I mean, it's how you want the data that you're coming in
I
to be
know, but what does
separated.
that have to do with record separators? Record separators should be something like quotes, new line, or something. Right?
Yeah.
That would be a typical record separator. So using it, hijacking it for this purpose doesn't make any sense.
Well, to me, they're similar because, if you have an explicit delimiter, then you can't, then these other behaviors that I'm suggesting are impossible, right? So it's just like, do you want to delimit on a message boundary? Is kind of how I'm thinking about it.
And what are the answers?
Well, by automatic, if you give automatic, then you're delimiting on message boundaries. If you say none, then you're just getting the data as it arrives. There's no, separating it at all.
But I don't understand that. I don't understand. A record separator means you get it when the record is finished, right? That's what you're typically getting. You get it when the record is finished, correct?
Yeah.
So it should be record separators to all, if you want it to come every time anything comes in.
Well, I guess for Zerum Q-Link, it's using none for the kind of
For what?
give me data as it comes in.
Well, I think it's a crazy way to do it.
Well, should we take that as we can take another look at this.
Well, no,
I think
I think it should be an option that is explicitly says. I mean, do we have this in the device framework? I thought we had something like this in the device framework.
take a look. For device open or
Yes, so it has a whole buffering mechanism.
let's see. Hang on a second.
Device configure.
I don't see anything that talks about that at all.
Yeah, we can look at
Look,
it.
devices either read continuously or they read. This notion of buffers.
I see a buffer length option.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
Okay, so fine.
You mostly object to the name, right? You recycling the name. So
Yeah,
we
I
can come
just
up
don't
with
think it makes any sense at all. I think it's completely crazy.
Okay.
I think this is a question of whether, and I don't know whether other functions are affected by this. This notion of do you get the data continuously or do you wait for the end of the record? Right? Is that the choice? Chris, is that the choice? Hello?
I guess I would frame it differently. I think it, to me, when I see record separators, and I'm coming at it from how ZMQ Link is using it, is just like, I mean, if you give me a delimiter, then I'm going to wait till I have the delimiter before I give you any data. That's the record. But if it's none, then the record is just however it's segmented as it's coming to me, you know? So, okay, I have this data, it's going directly, I'm passing it through.
Yeah, all right. I'm not an enthusiast, but I guess it's okay. I mean, mostly this is going to be code. So long as they're examples, I guess it's okay. I don't think it's great. All right, let's keep going. How much more do we have to cover, by the way?
Reading messages, writing messages.
Okay, so
Yeah.
show me that stuff, please. Only show me the new stuff. I don't need to see what was there before.
Okay.
Just show me what you're proposing.
Socket read message, WebSockets.
Is that already there? So socket read message is already a function, yes?
Yep. The new part is that for WebSocket messages, we think we need to return an association. The existing socket read message returns a byte array. We need an association because there's different message
Makes
types,
sense.
and they can be in parts.
And the
Makes
multi-part is important because you need to know if you
I
right, if you
understand.
yeah.
Okay.
And so there's some more into the weed stuff, but I'll skip that. What we also think we need is a socket write message. The new thing about this is there is no existing socket write message. And the reason why we need something like a socket write message is, we need to be able to specify things like the type of the message, or, whether it's a fragment of like a complete message.
So socket read, how do you send something to a socket, to a ZMQ socket?
So you'd use things like write string or binary write, that kind of stuff.
Why is this not called socket write?
I'm going off a socket read message. Why isn't socket read message called socket read, right?
Okay. All right.
So we
So
have
the other types of sockets, ZMQ and so on, you're saying that they allow just pure writes, like write string.
Yeah, and I think we should for WebSockets too. But I also think that if you want to, have careful control of the message that you're sending, there should be a function for that.
Yeah, fine. But then can we install that for the other types of sockets as well?
We could, but it would be a different thing. Yet, but yeah,
What do you mean a different thing?
I mean it's different than WebSockets.
Well, I don't understand why you're saying that. I mean, is it it's different as in it has different keys in that association or what?
No,
So why is it different?
it's a different goal.
Why?
It's a different protocol, right? CMQ is a
Of course,
different
it's a
protocol.
different protocol,
yeah.
but
So
are
we
the
get,
same issues there?
I think the thing is we're just going into it trying to support WebSockets, and we felt there was no other way to support WebSockets that
I
made
understand
sense
that. I'm
just to
asking
go.
you for compatibility, shouldn't we support this kind of association for example, ZMQ sockets?
Yes.
Okay, so that's all there is to say. I mean, are the same keys relevant for a ZMQ socket, like a multi-part thing, or not?
The multi-part is, the type is not.
Okay, fine. So then we can support that. But we should support that for those other socket types as well, for compatibility. We don't want to have something where it's just okay. So here, if it's write string, what is the default type and so on for write string?
It would be text. And then if basically the only other message that we think will make sense for people to send in that context is a binary, and that's why you would use that binary format option. So you'd say binary format goes to true if you wanted to use a binary.
But so
Um,
why do we need socket write message then? Why isn't it just, isn't there a write byte array? Look up write byte array. I believe there's a write byte array.
there's a there's a
Oh,
binary.
there's a binary write. Right, there's a binary write. So what the heck is wrong with just using binary write?
Because there are
This-
multiple keys, right, in the message.
So there's also the multi-part complete.
Yeah, there are 3 keys here, right? There are 3 different things you're sending in one message, right? You have to just say, what are the bytes? What's the type of the, what I'm sending, and what, is it a complete, multi-part message or not? So there's just more like a 3 argument function than a 1 argument function.
And also, like I think you can do binary write of something that's like a binary format goes to false file. I think it's not entirely just using binary write isn't entirely consistent with like what the underlying data is supposed to be. To me, it's a little bit of a different thing, and we have kind of a design that's kind of consistent with that. So I just well, so like we were thinking that it would play together a little bit. So like if you had binary format goes to false, this is similar behavior like you would get with like a file
Okay, but
string.
if you have binary format to true, does binary write work?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
But and then if you did restring of a non-binary thing, then you get an error.
Yeah, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. I get it. I get it.
And there's also different. I mean, there are other types of messages that are called control frames in WebSockets that you might want to deal with. If you're getting more into the weeds.
Okay, so that's type. That's another type specification other than text.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
What kinds of things are in control frames?
There's a way to do pings and pongs like a heartbeat thing, and you can kind of it's up to the connection. They can do more things with these. So like the idea is that one side sends a ping, the other sends a pong. But then there's other stuff you can do with them, and then there's also the close type message. So if you wanted to send, we think that we really shouldn't expose. If you're closing a connection,
you should use socket close.
You should use close. Yeah, there's not a socket close, but
okay, it's close. Okay.
And in that close, we think that maybe there should be options, like connection close code or something. Those are the 2 pieces of data that you can provide. So we think you should use close.
An exit, for example, you can give an exit code for a process. I don't know whether close allows you to do that. Tom would be the person who would know all about this stuff.
Well, what's the case you're thinking of?
No, I'm saying for an exit code for a process, you can just give it. Say exit 17, it'll return exit code 17 from the process.
Yeah.
But I'm saying here, you're saying the function close, probably unchanged since version 1, would need to have options.
And that's a problem we have. It's just like there are no options in it currently. So we would be adding options.
So what? That's
Okay.
okay.
I mean, it's just a very generic function, and we're adding really specific stuff to it. But I'm fine with it.
I mean, the close there could be an association. It could say close of an association. The association could contain, I think there will be a better way to do it than adding options to close.
Okay. And then it could just be like, well, just one quick question is, what would the key be for the socket object? Just socket object, or?
I would say that, or just object.
Okay. Yeah, so we've kind of basically gone through most of it, and like I was saying, socket objects are already supported with a whole bunch of different input output functions in the language. They would also be supported for socket objects. So if you didn't want to deal with the socket read message or the socket write message, you could also use a write string or read string, that kind of thing.
Okay, but this socket write message, again, we agree you'll support that for the other types of sockets as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's existing code in ZeroMQLink for a socket write message. It's just hasn't been made a system symbol for some reason.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what else do we need to look? Socket ready queue, all that kind of stuff. That just carries over, right?
Yeah, and that, that's a
Okay,
yeah.
let's see our nodes demo. Are we ready for that?
Sure. So our node has something with connecting to
There's
Gemini.
one thing to say there. This is not, of course, not using the socket functions. This is using functions that are one level below, right? The curling functions.
Yeah, okay.
But, okay, so you understand. This
So
is
this will eventually be WebSocket Connect. No, it will be Socket Connect.
Yep.
And
yeah,
then
it will be the functions we just discussed. Yeah. So we'll rewrite this notebook with the actual functions that we just designed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
And you can see some of the kind of the lower level details about like the type of the messages, that kind of
Yeah, I
stuff.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see it run.
So I'll just first you have to establish the connection, then you have to kind of set up about like what you're using the connection for, and then there's you can do something like well, I guess my connection has died in the intermediate time. One second.
Why do you need to do that?
I think the WebSocket connection died. If there's not activity on the connection, it may have been closed.
But why do you have to quit the kernel? Just a bug or what?
Probably just some bug in this, yeah.
Okay, fine. But that isn't something you would normally have to do. If
No.
the thing died, you just have to reopen it.
Yep. So now I'm just reinitializing everything. You have to give my slow kernel startup a break.
Why is it so slow?
I don't know.
Debug kernel or something. It's kind of, it's not that slow for me, for sure. So.
Maybe it's just too not powerful enough computer. I don't know.
Okay.
Setting it up. So that kind of
do the recipe one. That's maybe a little more interesting.
And so then Arnie has one.
Delete. Okay.
Has one where it kind of it flows the output as it's generated onto the screen, and you may have been able to see that.
Yeah, okay, nice.
So that's like there's kind of services
how did
like
it get
that.
formatted there? I don't understand how it formatted that.
It's markdown formatting. So I just
no, but how did it process the markdown there? Is it just that's just part of that function? Okay.
Yeah.
So it returns the thing as a cell with the markdown format sort of applied.
Yeah, it's here. Let me draw on the screen where it is. Yeah, it's right there.
Okay. Okay, cool.
But this is using that incomplete messages stuff. So it's
Yeah, I get it. Okay.
You've seen that.
Yeah. And we have, Arnie's been working on different examples with different, there's apparently a lot of different services that are making use of WebSockets. So.
Okay, so which things can we introduce into the system based on this technology?
I mean, a lot of things like you can have, like better autocomplete, because this is a little bit faster than the Control K autocomplete we have right now. We could look at that.
How is that? Autocomplete from where? What are you talking about? I don't understand. What server is that going against?
I think right now we're using the Wolfram LLM Git service.
I'm sorry, what autocomplete are you talking about?
We had an example with
the code suggestions, the new Control
Okay,
K.
that's different. That's different. Yeah, code suggestions are terrible right now, but that's not the same as autocomplete, ordinary autocomplete for a symbol name, right? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
That's the light bulb thing. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
On Node?
Yeah, I can show what I'm talking about if you let me share for a second. It's basically the same example, but it uses the right. So you basically, when you're typing, right, you type plot open brackets, right, and then you want to get some suggestions, and this is doing kind of the same thing where you do.
But where is it going to get those suggestions? Is it going to
In this-
Gemini or is it going to
in-
us?
In this case, in this example, I'm using the
Okay, fine. It's using
WebSocket,
some
yeah.
external
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not using our thing, because I didn't think we set up something which has a WebSocket server, right?
Mhm.
Which is
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
would
Yes,
need
yes.
to be able to do this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Sorry if that was confusing, but
Yeah, that was
this is what I'm
completely
talking
confusing.
about. Yeah. But this is quite fast. This is under about half a second.
Okay, but
Connect
that's
to-
completely different functionality, which we don't have right now, right? You made that
Yeah.
functionality.
Yeah. Well, we have this, right? So you do plot open bracket, and then you can press Control K, and then it says generating suggestions, and it takes a few seconds. Right. It works, but it's not the fastest. And then it gives you a pop-up of
Yeah,
these
okay, but
things.
it's completely, utterly different functionality. It's completely different functionality. I mean, the speed
Mhm.
there has to do with the speed of going through our whole RAG, CAG system and so on. It has absolutely nothing to do with the transmission time.
Yeah, no, that's probably true.
So
Yeah.
it's irrelevant. I mean, it's amusing, but it's irrelevant.
I
Mhm.
think it's just any areas in the language that want to make use of some web service
Yeah,
that,
I know, but so
but
tell me
like,
what web service, because this isn't it.
well, one we saw, that people were talking about is just like, I think there's a chat GPT real-time voice, and like the only way it would make sense for our language to access it is through WebSockets. So maybe that's a new
Fine.
thing that we can open
Yeah,
up.
but so let's figure that out, whether that makes sense. Okay. So there's also financial data feeds, blockchain data feeds, and so on. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You want to run
Do we
that
have
demo,
demos of
Chris,
that?
or-
Okay,
Yeah.
if you're going to stop sharing, Chris, start sharing, please.
Okay. Like, right, just steal it from
Yes,
us.
start sharing.
Um, so mine's a low tech example of just updating it's like an exchange rate over time. But this is using, the asynchronous
Yep.
ability. So, what we do is we send out a message subscribing to some symbol, for this case,
Yes, I
and
get
then
it.
eventually this should update.
This is going against what web service?
It's a service called 12 Data.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch of them, but
Yeah.
none of them
Okay.
are free. So we have to look at a few of them
Yeah, I
relay
understand.
that through
So-
service
so-
credits and things like that.
I'm just waiting for my data to come in. In this case, it's not particularly, in this particular example, it's not fast. But
Normally, these data feeds are in like the order of a few hundred milliseconds. I'm not sure why this one is.
Yeah, okay, so it's not probably useful. But what are some other examples?
well, Arnold, you've been looking at the different cases. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the two main cases I've looked at. The financial data feeds. Let me see if I have another example.
All right. Okay, fine. I think we're okay. Anything else we need to go over in this meeting?
I think that was,
I don't think so.
it. We just mainly wanted to get your feedback on the socket.
Yeah, I mean,
family of
so
functions
my
to use
comment
it, yeah.
is the old socket design is kind of cruddy, and
Mhm.
it will be nice to clean that up, but it's more important that we get WebSockets running than that we do that cleanup. But if you're doing these changes now, you might as well set it up the way we want it to be set up.
Yeah, so we'll do what we can there, but the priority will be to get WebSockets ready for 14.4, the next release.
Yes.
And yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, sounds good.
We'll bring this back to you one more time when it's completely ready, so you can see,
Yeah, okay, but it can be part of another meeting. I don't expect a lot of time here. This looks great. Well done.
Okay.
All good. Okay. Thanks a lot. See
Bye.
you all. Bye.
Right.